welcome to another video. So this is my June wrap-up. I actually had a pretty good reading month in June, especially when we think about comparing it to May, which was awful. I read like 5 books. So I'm kind of back on track with June. I read 12 books. I'm going to just shimmy over so I can put all my statty bits up here. I read 12 books, which was a total page count of 4,857 pages, which is about average for me. It's a huge amount, but that's about average on what I will read in a normal month. So the genres I read, I had 4 romance, 3 middle grades, 2 fantasy, 1 thriller, 1 lit fic and 1 contemporary. So again, quite a range of genres. One of the books is a fantasy romance. I've put it under fantasy rather than under romance, but I'll get to that one when I talk about it. My average ratings, I had 2 5 stars, yay! 1 4.5 star, 7 4 stars, 1 3.5 star, 1 3 star, which gave me an average rating of 4.08, which I think is pretty good. Not only did I read a good amount of books, my average rating was over 4 stars. Fantastic. And I don't think I have stats for this one, but where I got them from: 1 book I hauled in 2023, 5 books were sent to me from the publisher, 5 books were from my existing TBR, and 1 book was from KU. And then finally, how I read them: 9 books were physical, 3 were digital, and I didn't have any audiobooks this month. So that is the stats. Let's get into what I've actually read this month. I have a pile here next to me. As always, a lot of the books are ones that I have read for work. 3 of them. 3 of the books are ones that I've read for work. If I read them for work, I don't actually rate them or give like a full review of them. I will tell you I'll tell you what they're about, but I won't give a full review just because I feel like I'm being paid to talk about this book, so it's not a fair review. So bear with me while I get my books on. Okay, so let's start off up at the top. The first book that I read in June was The Dragon Reborn by Robert Jordan. This is book 3 in the Wheel of Time, and I'm reading this one as part of the Wheel of Time Along, which is hosted by Sandra. I got a thing for things. I need to read the next book in the series this month, which is the biggest one so far. It's over 1,000 pages. I enjoyed The Dragon Reborn. It's probably my favourite of the series so far. I mean, we are only 3 books into a 14-book series, so that doesn't say a huge amount. This one focused more on Perrin, who I really like. And we saw more of the girls' story in this one as well. I liked that we got different perspectives rather than just Rand, which is much more enjoyable. Rand is very much a chosen one, and he's the best and the greatest at everything, and just a bit boring. I gave this one 4 stars. I did like it. Like I said, I did enjoy it a lot. I still can't really tell you the plot, to be totally honest. So the overall, I guess, series synopsis with this one, each age the Wheel of Time spins and everything that happens in the age happens again. We follow across the series, we follow Rand, who is seen to be the Dragon Reborn. The Dragon Reborn is a figure that appears every age and can either turn that age towards dark or towards light. So he's kind of like the pivotal character for the world, I guess. There's also Matt and Perrin, who are Tar Varan, who also can impact what's happening to the wheel and the weaving of the world. So we're following these 3 who... So we've got Rand, who is the Dragon Reborn, which means he can now touch magic. Magic makes men go insane, whereas women can channel it safely. We've got 2 other women from the village where these kids were from who are learning to become Aes Sedai, who magic wielders. We're all going we've kind of now split the group into, I guess, 4 separate paths. We've got Rand out by himself. We've got Nynaeve, Egwene and Elaine, I think, the 3 women who are trained to be Aes Sedai, who are all there by themselves. You've got you've got Perrin with Moraine and Lan, who are basically chasing Rand. And then you've got Matt, who is following the 3 girls. So we've got our characters in separate places. I don't know how much you can see in here, but I actually highlighted this map with the different characters and where they were going, try and kind of keep myself up to date with who was where and what they were doing and why. So my map has got some coloured squiggles all over it. But yes, I enjoyed this one, gave it 4 stars. I'm scared of continuing, but I'm looking forward to continuing. I've then got Fourth Wing by Rebecca Yarros. This book's incredible. Top book of the month, 5 stars. I loved it. So in this one we follow Violet, who is forced into the Riders quadrant of the training academy. So it's like a magic school kind of system. She had trained her whole life to be to work with books, basically to be a librarian. I can't think what the word actually is. Sorry, brain isn't working. It's a Sunday afternoon. But she had trained her whole life to work in books, to be a scribe, that's it. But then when her dad died, her mum, who is head of the Dragon Quadrant, forced her to become a dragon rider. Now, you either graduate or you die in the Riders Quadrant. Even entering the quadrant is a basically test, and if you fall and you die, and that's it. So every day there is literally like a death roll call read out. Anyway, so Violet is in this quadrant. She is disabled. She is I don't really know exactly what her disability is, but she seems to have, like, I guess, brittle bone disease, maybe. I'm assuming that, just because she regularly breaks her bones and is constantly in pain, and also is a lot smaller than most other people. So she struggles. She's not seen as strong. She's seen as weak. So especially when they're learning, like, fighting and stuff like that, there's a lot of people who want to kill her because of who her mother is. So with this as well, her mum is the leader. I'm explaining this so badly. Her mum is the leader of the Riders Quadrant, which makes her like the leader of the armies. And I think it was about 10 years previously, however many years previously, she overthrew a coup, a rebellion, killed everybody who was involved in that rebellion, and forced all of their children into the Riders Quadrant. So a lot of those children are now in the quadrant with Violet and are blaming her for her mother's crimes because she's there and she's an easy target. So that leads us on to Xaden, who is Violet's wing leader, I believe. And he is kind of the leader of the rebellion's kids. And he says he's already said, I am going to kill you. Anyway, they end up, it's brilliant. The enemies to lovers in this is fantastic. There's there's a sort of a love triangle storyline going on as well. The drama, the tension. If you've read this, when Xaden pins her to the mat, if you know, you know. But basically, yes, believe the hype. Fourth Wing is incredible. 5 stars. I loved it. It's fantastic. Definitely top read of the month. It is up there for top read of the year so far. It was fantastic. So, book number 3. And I'm going to speed up a little bit, is Speak of the Devil by Rose Wilding. This is a book I've worked on, so I'm not going to give you my ratings or reviews, but this one follows 7 different women who we meet them at the beginning and standing in a hotel room around a severed head. Any one of them could have murdered this man, and they don't know who. So it kind of follows these 7 women, and you're trying to work out their motives, as well as the detective who's trying to work out the case. So throughout it, you kind of uncover what everybody's motives are, who this man is to everybody, what he did to them all, why they might all want him dead. Really, really interesting, really twisted and dark, and recommend. Pick this one up. This one only came out last week, I think. I think it came out 26th of. Okay, the next book on my pile is The Duke and I by Julia Quinn. So I read this one because I was trying to decide whether or not I wanted to buy the Alima Crate Bridgerton box set, and I thought, well, I should at the very least read one of the books to decide are these the series that I'm going to want to read. And I read it, and actually I did really enjoy it. So I gave this one 4 stars. I really enjoyed it. I really liked, for the first 3 quarters, I really liked Daphne's character. I liked her humour, I liked her sass, I liked her wit, I liked the relationship between Daphne and her 3 older brothers. I really enjoyed that. I felt like I preferred the series Simon rather than the book Simon, but I really enjoyed it for that first 3 quarters. If you've read this book or if you've seen the show, you know that this little madam does something, and that made the book awful for me. I felt like that scene was completely unnecessary. It was not needed. B, I felt it was handled really badly. So after this thing happens, and I'm going to try not to mention anything that's spoilers, Simon leaves, but when he returns, he doesn't acknowledge, and he doesn't sort of, he says he left because he felt like his stutter was coming back, rather than acknowledging what she had done. And I just wished that there had been that conversation, that, even if it'd come back and said, I was really hurt that you did that, anything like that. But instead he put the blame on himself, and I just felt that was poorly done. I just felt like that. I don't understand why you'd include that scene if you're not going to then discuss the implications of that. So yeah, I was very disappointed. And again, it's one of those, I've seen the series, so I knew that it was coming. But I was hoping that it was going to be handled slightly better than the series. I felt like the series did the best they could. They handled it in the best possible way they could. But I still feel like there needed some discussion and some acknowledgement, which there wasn't. But like I said, I gave it 4 stars because the first 3 quarters I really, really enjoyed, and I felt like I couldn't drop it too much lower for one scene, even though the scene did kind of ruin quite a lot of, well, it didn't ruin the book for me, but I felt it was really unnecessary and really poorly handled. So I would say, do just please be careful when you go into this book. Please do check the trigger warnings on this one. Next book is another one that I read for work, which is Reproduction by, that's upside down, Reproduction by Louisa Hall. This one is the lit fic. So again, I've read it for work. I'm not going to give you my ratings or review. This one, so it's lit fic, and I'm not very good at explaining lit fic because I don't always understand lit fic. This one follows a woman who is trying to get pregnant and has been pregnant. It's also discussing Mary Shelley's Frankenstein. So while Mary Shelley was writing Frankenstein, she was struggling to conceive. She had had multiple miscarriages, and she had lost a couple of babies as well. So while the author's writing this one, and I honestly don't know if this is meant to be as a memoir or as or fiction. I honestly don't know. So we're discussing her own sort of, well, it discusses a lot of miscarriages and reproduction health. We've then got a character who comes in who is a biochemist who is experimental with pregnancy, I guess, in that she's attempting some forms of genetic modification to ensure that the fetus will survive. And there's then that conversation of how far can you go with science? You know, how far should you, I guess, morally go with the science that we have available? It's a very interesting read if you like lit fic and if you like dark books. I would say pick it up, it's interesting. Next I read completely different idea. I read Hedgeley by Skye McKenna. This one is a middle grade. It follows, I can't remember the character's name, Cassie, who is goes to stay with her aunt. And her aunt is the hedge witch. The hedge witch protects the village of Hedgeley and therefore the greater UK from the hedge, which is basically the border between the human world and the fairy world. So Cassie is training now to become a witch. You learn magic, it's not inherited. And is trying to get to know her aunt and get to know sort of who she is and what happened to her mother. So Cassie had been in an orphanage for I think 7 years prior to this. And then the police or some lawyers or whoever had declared her mother dead because she'd been missing for that long. And that then triggered a letter or something to her next of kin, which was the aunt. So the aunt hadn't known that she had existed. I really enjoyed this one. I gave this one 4 stars. I really liked it. I thought it was a really fun story. It's definitely a series that I'm looking forward to continuing. Yeah, it's a really, really fun middle grade. Excited by this one. Continuing the middle grade, I finished off my reread of the Percy Jackson series, of Percy Jackson The Last Olympian. I gave it this one 4 stars. Loved it, it's fantastic. So this is book 5 in Percy Jackson. And this is the culmination of that first series with the fight against the Titans, and cover is incredibly shiny. And yeah, I really liked it. These books are so fun, they're so fast paced. I just have a great time reading them. I then moved on to the Heroes of Olympus, book 1, which is the Lost Hero. So this one we follow is in the same world as Percy Jackson, and we do meet some of the same characters, but we are following a different set of characters. So we are following Jason, Piper, and Leo. I really, really like this one. Again, I gave it 4 stars. It's over 500 pages. It is probably longer than it needs to be totally honest, but I enjoyed it. It was a lot of fun. I really like the new characters in this one, and I like that they are slightly older, so they're all 16 in here. So this one basically takes place about less than a month after the events of this one, and yeah, I really enjoyed that. I like as well, and we start to get inklings of it towards this one. This is a reread for me, but I like that we start to get the Roman mythology coming in, and kind of learning to see how that all takes place. So that one there was the next book that I have. Next book to move over here is Business or Pleasure by Rachel Lynn Solomon. This is another one that I read for work, and I really enjoyed this one. I gave this one 4.5 stars. This follows, I can't remember the character's name, so I'm sorry about that. This follows a ghostwriter who is working, I think she's called Chandler. She's called Chandler. Follows Chandler, who is a ghostwriter. And she is working on a book for Finn, who is an actor. So he was famous for a series I'd say 10 years ago. And he's not done a huge amount of big work since then. So he does a lot with Comic Cons and basically, yeah, kind of events like that. So the series he was famous for was a vampire werewolf teen drama, but set in a college, so slightly older. So in my mind, it was Twilight / Vampire Diaries / Buffy the Vampire Slayer. That's kind of the thing that he was famous for. So Chandler was travelling around with Finn. Before they signed this contract to be ghostwriter and author, they hooked up and had really bad sex. And Chandler, when they start traveling together, they address the elephant in the room, that they've had sex, and Chandler mentions that it wasn't the best. And this is what I really, really enjoyed with this book, is that rather than letting his ego get away with him, Finn was like, oh, okay, how can I improve? What can I do to be better, rather than putting all the blame on the woman, which, happens. So I liked that kind of initial setup. They then have basically a series of sex lessons, and we go from there. Like I said, I enjoyed it a lot. It was a lot of fun. There was some good levels of spice in it, and there were some really, really good conversations around consent and around sexual pleasure, and yeah, I enjoyed it. Next one I read was another one for work, which was The Dream Builders. That's upside down again. The Dream Builders by Undrula Mukherjee. So this one, we follow 10 different characters in a town in India. Our main character, the one we follow first, has been living in the US for the last 12 years, and she comes back to India to visit her father about 6 months after her mother's passed away. And it starts off with kind of her impressions of this new India that she's returned to. So these high rises, and coming out, looking out the window of her father's flat, there is the Trump Towers, built by none other than Donald Trump. And again, she lives in America, so she is kind of saying this is set while Trump was president. And she's kind of saying, like, he's not my president, I don't agree with him, but seeing how people were treating him as a complete celebrity, and how he's managing to get these houses built. What I liked with this one is that with each chapter is a new character, and they're all interconnected in some way. So we start off, I'm so bad with names. We start off with Night. The next character follows that friend Ramona. Then it's something like the next day, and she's done something, and then again it follows that character that she interacted with. So you have this kind of overarching plot, but told from different perspectives, which I thought was really clever, and I really enjoyed it. I then read, why am I holding them all upside down? I then read The Hating Game by Sally Thorne. I really enjoyed this one. I gave it 5 stars. This one, I had seen the film, and I'm tempted I might watch the film again tonight, but I really, really enjoyed it. I liked the tension between them. I thought that the enemies to lovers was done really well. I did find Lucy a little bit irritating with her being so, like, ignoring what was right in front of her face. There were multiple times when it was clearly obvious that Josh was flirting with her, or that he had done something, and she was like, oh, it must have been someone else. It's like, well, obviously it wasn't. Like, it's really glaringly obvious that that thing was done by Josh. So she irritated me a little bit, but I genuinely really, really loved this book. I thought it was fantastic. I loved their relationship. Like I said, I loved the tension, and 5 stars. Really good. Really enjoyed it. So then the final book that I read in June was Praise by Sarah Kate. This is a very, very smutty erotica, which I read on the plane on my way home. I had to kind of angle my Kindle away from my neighbour in case they saw what filth I was reading. But this one was a lot of fun. So this is book 1 in the Salacious Players Club series. And it's set in, well, it's based around a kink club. So we've got a lot of talk around BDSM and dom-sub relationships. We follow Charlie, who's broken up with her boyfriend, and her boyfriend's dad had co-signed on the flat that they were renting, and he had received back their deposit. So she goes to his house to get back her half of the deposit. When she walks in there, he thinks that she is a secretary that's been that he's paid for, otherwise known as the next submissive for him to try out. And so it's sort of like, get on your knees, what are you doing? And so she's like, well, I have no idea what's going on, but okay, right, whatever. Anyway, they then realise that they've got their wires crossed and she is not supposed to be, you know, a sex worker for him. And he ends up hiring her as a secretary, as a, you know, completely straight secretary. And she kind of fancies him, even though it's her ex-boyfriend's dad. So things get a little bit complicated. Charlie gets introduced to like the world of kink and the world of BDSM and the world of sex, basically. And I really enjoyed how that was done. I really liked how open everybody was with sex and how it wasn't a taboo. But I also liked how on the other side you had her ex-boyfriend Beau didn't speak to his father because he thought that his father was some sort of pervert because he owned a sex club. So I liked how you kind of saw both sides of this. There also is trans rep in here, which I felt as a reader was done really, really well. Now, I'm not own voices, I can't say how well it was done, but I felt it was addressed in quite a sensitive and natural manner. It wasn't one of those where, you know, they come in and be like, hello, this is X character, they are trans. You know, it was done naturally. And I really liked that. And I thought it was, I'm not going to say who the character is in case of spoilers. I don't think it's a massive spoiler, but I still won't say it. But yeah, I thought it was handled really well. And I thought it was a really nice addition to include in the book. I felt as well that the character they chose as trans, if I don't want to say who it was or anything about them, but I really liked that it was that character that they chose to make, that the author chose to make trans. Just because I felt like it's important to see trans people across all walks of life, all ages, everything, and I really liked seeing this particular trans character. This feels like I don't feel like I'm explaining this very well. I feel like I'm being very vague here, but like I said, I'm just trying not to spoil anything. Okay, so these are the 12 books that I read in June. I felt like I had a really good reader month this month. So like I said, 2 5 stars, 7 4 stars, only a couple of 3 or 3.5 stars. So really, really good, and a huge amount of books read. So I feel like I'm back on track. I clearly slumped massively in May. I only read 5 books. So it was a big slumpy month for me. So I'm really glad that I'm back out of my slump, reading the books that I'm enjoying reading. I didn't really read anything that was on my TBR. I had 6 books on my TBR and I read 2 of them. But if you saw my TBR, which I'll link up here, I did say that I'm not going to punish myself for not reading the books that are on my TBR. I'm going to read what I want to read and make sure that I'm enjoying what I'm wanting to read, what I am reading, rather than picking out random books and then having to squeeze them in and feel guilty for not reading something that I didn't want to read, if that makes sense. So I have still got myself a TBR for next month, but it's more of a kind of flexi. This is me playing my game and seeing what I want to read, but you know, we'll see what happens. So if you got it this far, please leave me a little heart emoji for the 5 stars that I got, and please, yeah, like this video if you liked it, comment down below, subscribe if you would like to. I'm gonna try and learn how to speak before my next one, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.